The 2-week ceasefire that took effect on April 7, 2026, is not a step toward peace. It is a tactical pause, a moment in which exhausted combatants regroup and recalculate. 5 weeks of open warfare between the United States, Israel, and Iran have left every side calculating its next move. To understand this crisis, you must abandon the comforting language of diplomacy. States pursue power and security in an anarchic world. They trust no one with the means to destroy them. There is no world government. There never has been. Every state ultimately relies on itself for survival. This is not cynicism. It is the oldest lesson in the history of nations. The ceasefire is a mutual recognition that neither side has achieved its core security objectives at acceptable cost. One condition attached to the ceasefire: Iran must reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Approximately 20% of the world's oil supply transits this narrow waterway. American strategy in the Gulf has, for decades, rested on a single organizing principle: freedom of navigation. This is not a humanitarian principle. It is a hegemonic one. Control over the arteries of global commerce is a form of structural power. Washington's insistence on keeping the strait open is an insistence on preserving American primacy. Tehran's decision to close or threaten the strait was, from a realist standpoint, entirely rational. It was the one lever Iran possessed that could impose asymmetric pain at minimal direct military cost. When the weak face the powerful, they choose asymmetry. They fight on their own terms. The strait is Iran's most powerful non-nuclear weapon, and both sides know it. A ceasefire built on conditions is not peace. It is negotiated pressure. The clock is running. 2 weeks is a very short window. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth issued a stark ultimatum: surrender the highly enriched uranium or we will seize it. This is compellence, the most difficult and dangerous form of coercion in the realist canon. Deterrence prevents action. Compellence forces an adversary to undo what it has already done. Compellence demands public capitulation, and no regime can easily survive the appearance of surrender. For Iran, the enriched uranium is not merely a weapons program. It is the country's most potent bargaining chip. It is the one asset that compels the United States to take Tehran seriously as a regional power. A rational Iranian leadership has studied the lessons of Iraq and Libya with absolute clarity. Muammar Gaddafi gave up his weapons of mass destruction in 2003. 8 years later, NATO airstrikes helped kill him. The lesson of Libya has not been lost on Tehran. Surrendering the uranium is not a security request. It is a demand for strategic defenselessness. No realist state facing overwhelming conventional military superiority would comply with such a demand. The uranium is Iran's insurance policy against the fate of every regime that trusted American goodwill and paid with its existence. Washington knows this. Tehran knows this. The ultimatum is a test of resolve, not an expectation of compliance. Schelling called this the threat that leaves something to chance. The danger is real, but so is the bluff. Hegseth's statement is designed to be heard in Beijing and Moscow as much as in Tehran. American credibility is the subtext of every ultimatum Washington delivers. The risk is escalation. The risk of not acting, in Washington's view, is weakness.
Tehran responded not with silence, but with a 10-point plan. Iran demands that America formally accept its right to uranium enrichment. Iran demands the lifting of all sanctions, every single one. These demands are not ideological assertions. They are survival imperatives dressed in diplomatic language. Sanctions have functioned as a tool of economic attrition, designed to hollow out the Islamic Republic over time. From Tehran's perspective, sanctions are a state of permanent economic warfare. It is a slow siege intended to make the regime collapse or capitulate. Iran's demand to lift sanctions is a demand to be treated as a sovereign state, not a subject of discipline. The demand for enrichment recognition is even more fundamental. It is a demand for acknowledgement. Iran does not want to be managed as a pariah. It wants to be accommodated as an autonomous actor. This is, in essence, Iran seeking through diplomacy the security guarantee that only nuclear status provides. The structural problem is that neither Washington nor Jerusalem can afford to grant this recognition. American acceptance of Iranian enrichment would shatter 50 years of non-proliferation architecture. It would immediately trigger Saudi Arabia's own nuclear calculations. For Israel, it would mean accepting a permanent regional rival with the latent capacity for nuclear breakout. No realist reading of Israeli security interests permits such an outcome. The demands on both sides are not opening positions in a negotiation. They are the boundary conditions of survival. This is the tragedy of the security dilemma. Each side's reasonable precaution is the other side's existential threat. What the realist framework predicts, and what the current situation confirms, is not resolution, but managed antagonism. The ceasefire is durable only for as long as neither side calculates that renewed war would improve its position. The United States has demonstrated the capacity to inflict devastating conventional punishment. Iran has demonstrated the capacity to impose severe economic costs through energy disruption and asymmetric retaliation. Both sides have now updated their models of the other's resolve and capability. The result is not peace, it is a more informed stalemate. The danger in this moment is not that negotiations will fail, though they likely will. The danger is that each side will use the ceasefire as cover for repositioning. American forces consolidating their strike posture, Iran dispersing and hardening its remaining nuclear assets. In the realist world, this is not cynicism, it is prudence. Every hour of this ceasefire, both sides are preparing for the next round of coercion. This is the nature of an armed peace, not absence of conflict, but conflict deferred. The world's economy holds its breath every time a tanker passes through the strait. Global markets, supply chains, and governments are hostages to a standoff they did not choose and cannot control. Classical realism offers a sobering prescription. Not optimism, not despair, just clarity. Lasting stability in the Gulf cannot be built on either side's complete victory. It requires a negotiated balance of power, a framework both sides can live with, even if neither loves it. The United States must accept a degree of Iranian regional influence. Iran must accept meaningful limits on its nuclear program, not because goodwill will suddenly materialize, but because the alternative, open-ended coercion, is unaffordable. The 10-point plan and the uranium ultimatum are the opening moves of a protracted contest over who blinks first. History suggests that between a dominant external power and a determined regional state, clean capitulation is rare. The Strait of Hormuz may reopen. The uranium may become the subject of complex phased agreements. But the underlying structural tension between American primacy and Iranian resistance to subordination will not be resolved. It will persist for as long as the anarchic condition of the international system persists, which is to say, indefinitely.